the thing that we tell everybody, regardless of what team you work on at Meals on Wheels, is that if the meals don't get out every day, we didn't do our jobs. So that means we all drop everything and go deliver meals.
Welcome to the Smart Talk series, the show for professionals who want strategies, tips, and real talk about all things PR, marketing, and social media. Your host is Melissa Vella-Williamson, an award-winning, accredited, and nationally recognized PR pro and communication thought leader. And now your host, Melissa Vella-Williamson.
Hello, and welcome to episode 3 of the Smart Talk series. Today, I'm joined by 2 special guests from Meals on Wheels San Antonio. When COVID-19 hit San Antonio, Meals on Wheels jumped into crisis response mode. New needs and disruptions strained the nonprofit, which was already strapped for resources. Since last March, my team at MVW Communications and I have had the honor to work closely with our guests today. Chief Development Officer Forrest Miney and Communications and Marketing Director Ariana Barber. Together, we activated a crisis communications campaign that positioned this local Meals on Wheels as an essential lifeline for homebound, high-risk seniors. Despite multiple challenges, we rallied the community to keep delivering, keep donating, and keep their less visible client population top of mind. Unlike most Meals on Wheels programs, during these turbulent times, Meals on Wheels San Antonio has increased the number of meals delivered, the number of clients they serve, added counties to their market area, earned over 400 media placements, and grew in partnerships, volunteers, and donations. Welcome, Forrest and Ariana.
Hello, thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us today.
Well, thank you so much for being here. It's been a pleasure working with you all these years, but tell our listeners a little bit about yourself. Forrest, we'll start with you. Tell us a little bit more about your background and current role.
Sure. So I am the Chief Development Officer here at Meals on Wheels San Antonio. I have kind of always lived in the nonprofit world. My mom was an executive director of a nonprofit my whole childhood. I've been in nonprofit fundraising for a little over 12 years at this point and interned in college. So here at Meals on Wheels, I oversee essentially all of our external affairs as an organization. We work to communicate with the public and to bring resources into the organization to better serve our clients. So we do that through raising money. Ariana and her team do that through publicity and marketing and brand and digital media and all of that stuff. We have groups that do governmental affairs. We have a community engagement group that works with volunteers and community partnerships. And then we do a lot of strategic thinking about the direction of the organization. So kind of thinking about, as we're bringing in these resources, how can we best utilize them for the benefit of our clients? So that's kind of my role in a nutshell, or a very large nutshell. It's a great place to work, and we have so much opportunity to really kind of do crazy things and exciting things and innovative things. And I'm a little biased, but I think my department is really good at innovation and trying new things. So it's a really fun place to work.
They have absolutely shown over this last year for us. So absolutely, your bias is right on. It's an actual real acknowledgement from my side of the house for sure. Ariana, tell us a little bit more about your space and yourself.
Fantastic. Yes. Well, Forrest did a really great job of describing what I do and the team I work with does as the communications and marketing director for Meals on Wheels. Getting here, I got my undergrad degree in public relations, and through coursework along with the jobs that I held in college, I got the opportunity to work with tools that I now use every single day, like Adobe Creative Suite. My master's degree is in advertising, and that education really deepened the knowledge that I have of communications and the marketing world in a practical way that I've applied ever since graduation. And I've had internships and worked in agencies managing accounts, which means that I've always been able to work with all of the departments in those places. And that really gave me a feel for what every role was responsible for, which definitely prepared me for my first nonprofit position, in which I wore all of the hats of all of those positions I had grown to know. And I've worked as a volunteer individually and as a member of the Junior League of San Antonio, which was where my eyes were really opened to the power of nonprofits in the community and the enormous work that they do for everyone. I grew up in San Antonio, and being in junior league really just let me see more of San Antonio than the little bubble where I went to high school and everything. Through that opportunity, I oversaw community volunteer work, and it gave me the ability to work with nonprofit leaders and open my eyes to the fact that I could work for them and with them internally, like in-house, which was amazing. And so honestly, it really feels like everything I've done before now has led me to where I am, doing the communications and marketing for Meals on Wheels San Antonio. I wholeheartedly believe in the power of the community to do good and make life better for others. And one of my kind of life credos that I go to reset my headspace during frustrating times, I learned from a junior league speaker named Vicki Clark. She said that we are forever planting seeds for trees under which we may never sit. And according to the internet, the saying goes a way, way back, actually. But she was the first person I ever heard say it. And it was at a presentation on nonprofit leadership and the incredible amount of work that we can all do together for each other, which is part of what I love about working here at Meals on Wheels and in the nonprofit community.
All of that. I love all of that, Ariana. I talk about seed planting all the time. I know I probably drove you bonkers with my different metaphors and expressions, but it is very accurate in my vantage point as a public relations first professional. Like you said, the work is very integrated. You have to tell the story consistently across the channels. You all do a great job of that. And I have to say, embracing me and my team as true collaborative partners has been a unique strength of your nonprofit. So kudos to you. I've seen so much change in growth and innovation. So the seeds are planting, you're reaping some of the harvest, and you are continuing to plant the seeds that we need to continue to move forward, because it's still quite bumpy out there, isn't it, ladies?
Yes, absolutely. It still takes a village, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And you all have done a great job of kind of curating, cultivating, and maintaining your village over these last, it's over 12 months of this pandemic now. But how has the pandemic months and all this change really impacted your work at Meals on Wheels, Forrest?
I was looking at a video of an interview that I did with a telethon that Melissa helped set up for us at the beginning of the pandemic. And we were maybe 3 or 4 weeks in at that point. And I said something about how everything's different, but everything's the same. And I think that still holds true a year later. Our goals are the same. The thing that we tell everybody, regardless of what team you work on at Meals on Wheels, is that if the meals don't get out every day, we didn't do our jobs. So that means we all drop everything and go deliver meals if volunteers don't show up. And that still is the priority. I also think we, as an organization, our priority has been growth. And we had a new CEO come in almost 5 years ago, and he basically threw the playbook out and said, no, we need to be growing. We need to be serving more people. So that was already our drive. And certainly when I got here about a year after he did, but the pandemic has just magnified that. So any growth that we were projecting for the next 3 to 5 years has basically happened, or we've even gone bigger than that in the last year, in terms of the number of people we serve, the number of partnerships we have, the level and depth of service that our clients receive. All of that has dramatically increased in the last year. And it's been through our team just going hard and running into the face of this and saying, we're going to do it. We're going to figure it out later. We're going to use our resources, people, money, whatever, to make sure that our clients are as safe as possible and have as much benefit as possible. Luckily, we've thus far been able to figure it out on the back end, but it is a totally different mechanism and a different way we work now, but it is with the same goals that we had, in January of last year before we even knew this was going to be a thing. And it's just, if anything, heightened what we were already planning on doing.
Yeah, you make some great points for us. I know there's a couple key terms as a communications professional I've honed in on and heard multiple times and started putting in my pandemic lexicon, if you will. Accelerated has been one of them. And there's a lot of research and that's starting to come out, because research takes time, right? But there's a lot of headlines that are coming out about how much the pandemic accelerated so many negative things. And to your earlier point, it can also accelerate some silver linings and some wonderful things too. And And I think that's only possible because of the hard work that your team has put in, but also the smart work. You've been very innovative about your operational model and iterating and changing and evolving it with the fluid and dynamic changes and feedback we've had over time. So I just want to underline that as part of the strategies, that the actions you all took. You doubled down on your mission, you focused on the fundamentals, and not a lot of organizations did that during this time. So I think that is why you're succeeding and up for a couple national awards at the PRSA and PR News level. So I just want to say congrats on that. Ariana, you are my marketing partner in crime over there at Meals on Wheels. How's your viewpoint or things you've done shifted a little bit?
Oh, goodness. The last 12 pandemic months, I guess, officially, it has just really intensified the importance of the work that Meals on Wheels does, because it was already important, but knowing that we were going to need to feed people in the event of some sort of unanticipated lockdown for ourselves was always at the forefront in the immediacy of our actions and our communication. And that also meant that the importance of our communications and marketing efforts was really important, and it needed to be spot on so that we were saying the right thing at the right time and representing our ongoing actions and our plans for the future. We communicate to several different audiences every day. We have our donors, our volunteers, and of course our clients. And they all want to know and need to know different kinds of things. So it's been kind of amazing to see the number of people who've really taken to social media to reach out to us with Facebook messages or Instagram messages, or just reaching out via the website and making a lot of really good use of those forms I worked really hard on, which is great. So it's been neat because people go to these mediums, no matter their audience, to look for the information, ways to help or donate, or how to receive meals. And that's all been in conjunction with the coverage that we've gotten with our local television and print media, like the Express News, which maintains the strength of reaching lots of people at one time. And anytime really that the work we are doing is highlighted, whether it's in print or on TV, we can expect lots of phone calls for prospective volunteers and for prospective clients, which is important because both of those have to be here in order for the work to get done. It's part of our infrastructure, and our infrastructure was fairly solid before, but we've done a lot of shoring up as we've had to continue to react very quickly and pivot, which is one of those pandemic terms that I think we'll all be ready to hear less of at some point. And because really the first step is just referring someone for meals. And it's the first in a series of steps before a volunteer can deliver meals to someone's doors. There's the A of the somebody saying they need meals, and then the Z of the meals being delivered. But in between, there are a lot of moving parts, which Melissa's been able to see with regards to client intake and routing and the volunteer recruitment piece to get that person knocking on the door. And so, like Forrest said, a lot of that is different. Like everything is different, really. But at the end of the day, the priority is that knocking on that person's door and getting them that meal so that they aren't hungry.
Yeah, a lot of differences and a lot of innovation, which is great. But if you combine that with the fundamentals and remembering why and expressing that, I think that's part of what's making you all successful. In terms of development for us, I know fundraising is a specialty in the communications industry. Has anything changed in the development area? Any industry changes or differences you've seen?
It has been really interesting to see how this affects different nonprofits differently. So I think a lot of that is cause-based. It's sort of like, the Red Cross has a really boom or bust fundraising cycle because people give them so much money when there's a disaster. And then when there's not, it's hard for them to raise funds in the same way. And so this has been almost a whole year of disaster funding. And for us, in large part, probably because of our cause, which is taking care of people who are the most affected by the pandemic and have the worst outcomes from COVID, we have seen a dramatic increase in funding. But I also like to say, and this is, I think, the part where we crow a little bit, really, since I've been here, certainly since our CEO has been here, and the priority of our team for several years has been both working on the stewardship of our donors and working on our place in the market to remind everyone that we're a trusted nonprofit and we know what we're doing and we're here. And that's been a lot of the work that you've done with us, Melissa, is sort of reminding the community that we're here and we do good work and we're available and we're a good resource and we're a good opportunity. And then also, again, our team has worked really hard over the last several years to steward our donors. We have, the thing I like to say a lot is we have like 20,000 donors, but we want each of those 20,000 people to feel like we personally know who they are. We know their name, we know their giving history, we know why Meals on Wheels is important to them, and that we are appreciative of their specific gift. And so we do a lot to try to make that happen. And this year has been tremendous for us fundraising. And I think that is a combination of those two things. We are just kind of in the right place to receive that funding from people who really want to try to do something to help. The work that we do is in line with what they want to give to, but also we've spent years and years building up a reputation and building up a donor base that knows we appreciate them. And then I think our work, even with new donors, we brought 5,000 new donors on in the last fiscal year. And this is like, sounds crazy to people on the corporate side, but we want to the industry standard of a retention rate of your donors, meaning that your donors come back to you year over year, is about 45% in fundraising, which again, if you're a business and you're losing over half your customers every year, that's awful. And it is, but in fundraising, that's what the industry standard is. And we have maintained in the last 12 months a 65% retention rate. So we're keeping definitely over half of our donors every year. And that's a big deal. And so that I think is been really intense effort on our part to make sure that people feel appreciated and understand the mission and understand what their dollars are going to. And so for us, it's been good. I know for a lot of nonprofits, it's been really rough. I think there was a lot of speculation at the beginning of the pandemic that this was going to kill all of our corporate and foundation giving. Corporations weren't going to be able to give us anything because they weren't making money, and foundations were going to lose money on their investments. That's happened a little bit for us, but not to the extent that I think we were all worried about. So we've had people really want to rise up and give us more money because they see the impact of what we're doing. And so we've been very lucky in that way. And mostly what it means in terms of like back office stuff is we had to hire another person to help us enter donations because we were getting too swamped with our current staff. And that's a very good problem to have. So we're very, very blessed.
A great problem to have, absolutely. I will also point out a couple things. So in terms of this pandemic lexicon, I love that idea. I'm going to make sure I write that down somewhere. But one other term, I know that it became our theme at the beginning of the pandemic was to make sure you were defined and positioned as an essential service, a trusted service provider. You've been doing this. This is your expertise for years. And now your client population is even more vulnerable and important to remember. So that has been very helpful in carrying you. And also, I think in terms of giving, a lot of donors, both at the individual level and at the organizational level, have been really prioritizing what really matters during this time, right? We've switched from galas and some of the lighter hearted and sometimes cheeky event and fundraisers to, okay, let's talk about $5 feeds a senior at Meals on Wheels. This powers this emergency shelf-stable food box, for example. So a lot of smart ideas that you all have been able to activate against on too. So great. Ariana, and your viewpoint as someone who does a great job at marketing and content creation, is there any new things that you've tried or that you would share as best practices or lessons learned during this time?
Well, I was thinking about the beginning of the pandemic and how for lots of people, they kind of felt like time just stopped because everything was the same every day. But that was definitely the opposite of what everyone here at Meals on Wheels was experiencing, because we were coming in and working as hard as possible to make sure those we serve were fed should something happen, because it was all so uncertain. And on my LinkedIn About section, I say that I can do a few things, kind of tongue in cheek. And one of them I say is that I can create extra hours in the day. And it actually felt like those were needed in the beginning of the pandemic. And actually, as the year has continued, because it's just been so busy and we have grown so much. And I think it's always applied that you always have to be extra efficient with nonprofit communications. And it was all especially true of what had to happen and how, but especially so in those early days. At the beginning of the pandemic, we were weeks away from our annual luncheon that we work months to put on. Like pretty much everything else in the world was canceled. Our focus was supposed to be on a celebratory event that was celebrating our volunteers and thanking our supporters for helping to end hunger for seniors across our community. And stopping hunger is, unfortunately, it's an ever-present and urgent need. But that urgency became extra real because of the pandemic term uncertainty, the uncertainty surrounding everything in life. And Melissa, with your assistance, we were able to effectively get the message out about the need for volunteers. And we were given opportunities for fundraising, like the telethon that Forrest mentioned. We basically pioneered a virtual phone bank with KSAT through which the community supported the people that we're serving by giving over $40,000 to help provide emergency food boxes that we distributed in case of that unexpected interruption in service that we were all just kind of on pins and needles wondering if it was going to happen. When we rolled that out with the phone bank, we also did Venmo and Cash App as a way for people to give. And Venmo has actually proven to be kind of a longer lasting tool because we do see repeat donors through that tool like every single month. And it's kind of amazing that obviously that's how they want to give. And so they're continuing to give that way. Our messaging kind of went from just delivering more than a meal to older and disabled neighbors to delivering more than a meal to older disabled neighbors in a pandemic, which just really, again, heightened everything. And everything about the isolation that our clients have always experienced was, I think, something that people could actually really understand and connect to because so many were experiencing isolation for the first time due to the lockdowns that we all found ourselves in our communities.
Absolutely. I think we really grew in empathy as people and we could really connect with the mission in a new way. And then when we had like the Texas winter storm apocalypse here, it was even louder and more clear what it feels like to be in need, what it feels like to be isolated or in your home without being able to get food or provide for yourself in some very basic human ways. So I hope that we will continue as people to be able to empathize with our neighbors in need on your behalf. That's perfect. So I always wonder this because from my standpoint, it's absolutely wonderful to work with a PR consultant that's not in-house and sitting at your lunch table every day, or at least, pre-pandemic, right? So, but from your vantage point, was there anything, we have all types of listeners from the communication industry here, those who are consultants, those who are in-house, you may be at different vantage points in your careers later on, but what would you tell others about working with a PR consultant?
I think, first of all, it has been incredible and it has truly shifted our position in the city, our position in the Meals on Wheels world, the work that you and your team have done, Melissa. I think for me, and I would say that this is true, we also work with consultants like for special fundraising projects and board development and other things. And so I think this is kind of true across the board. I think at first I thought like, oh, great, now this is a thing we don't have to think about anymore because we have a consultant. And what it actually means is you are working just as hard, but your work is going a million times further. So in order for us to have an effective relationship, there's a lot of information you need from us. There's a lot of, things that we need to do on our end. And so it certainly isn't a like, now I can sort of wash my hands and Melissa's going to handle it. It definitely is a teamwork thing. And so we're probably working at the same level we would if we were trying to do this ourselves, but it goes so much further because of the connections you have, because of the way you think about things. And so it's definitely when you hire a consultant, assume that you're going to continue to have a lot of work in that direction, but know that it's going to have so much more of an outcome than it would if you were doing it by yourself.
That's Beautiful and poignant. Thank you so much. I'm going to clip that audio and put it everywhere because it is, sometimes I say we work in tandem. It is like a tag team. It is like we're running a race together and I toss the baton and you pick it up. But it does have to happen together because at the end of the day, people want to hear from the subject matter experts, from the staff members in-house. So on that, I want to also segue and talk a little bit about crisis communication because it feels like just about everything was crisis communication around the pandemic, at least in the beginning. I think now we're kind of in an ongoing issues management, but we've had 2021 is not that much smoother. It's still pretty bumpy. Our theme is communicating during turbulent times because of that. So, ladies, either one of you, let's say Forrest, what lessons have you learned about how to communicate when things are just so up and down?
I think being preemptive has been really important and thinking through what we feel comfortable saying. We, I think, as an organization, really try to be transparent, but also in every world, you have to be thoughtful about what you say. For us, in part, because how are we preemptive and giving people information even before they ask for it, so that on the back end, we're not fielding a million calls.
That's a great point. You all have done crisis communication planning with my organization. I think that was a great training ground. Ariana, did you feel like that helped prepare us for this really long-standing crisis?
Yes, it was almost like we were prescient with that training and that time that we spent together. Having invested in the crisis communications planning was just super helpful because it meant that we had already thought through many of the scenarios that we actually encountered during the pandemic and to make sure that we had the proper messaging for those times. And the pandemic also just made us recognize the importance of having done that planning and the fact that we may have to look at it all again in a bigger way. And the fact that we need to plan and prepare again for everything, even more than we previously thought. Like we all thought we had thought about worst case scenarios until we were living in a worst case scenario. and fortunately, we were able to have some times to step back and evaluate plans before they were put into action. And sometimes we just had to go and make it up as we went with the expertise that we already had, knowing and feeling confident that everything would work. And knowing that we could have those conversations as a leadership team, like what happens when something goes bad, because I know sometimes we don't want to talk about what can go bad. We just want everything to be amazing and good. I thought was really good to know like we could be open and honest because those kinds of conversations require some real raw truth from time to time. And you want to make sure everybody's definitely on the same page because we were all like thinking media could be outside our door at any time just because everything was about the pandemic and we were operating in the pandemic. So crisis communications, definitely. And that's a thing that we have reviewed since then and we'll probably review again in the near future with the thought of climate change, kind of weather events potentially taking place. So yeah, it's something that should be done and thought through. And I think it should be done and thought through with someone who's outside of an organization, because like you said, Melissa, they can poke around and ask questions, but in a way that is productive and effective.
Absolutely. It's comfortable and, we can help ask the questions. So thank you, Ariana. That was a perfect plug for doing the crisis comm work. Forrest, I like to ask all my guests this question, and you'll take this for the team, but what does smart talk mean to you?
Well, my first thought is it means what I used to get in trouble for with my mom when I was little, because I was such a smart aleck, and I have a daughter on the way who I'm sure is going to be such a smart aleck to pay me back. But I think for the purposes of this conversation, what's been really helpful, we've just been in it for the last year. And every day we come in, even now, and try to figure out like what's the next thing that's going to come up that's going to be crazy that we're going to have to deal with. And it's nice to have a minute to reflect and think back on what did we do that worked and what did we do that didn't work? And also like, what are the lessons that we've learned? And so that's been very valuable to me in today's conversation to really think through what things did we do in the last year that really worked well, and what can we learn from that moving forward?
Well, smart answer. I love it. Ariana, you're a marketing guru. End us and bring us home. What's the best way for us to learn more about your organization?
Wonderful. I love telling people how to learn more about us because I manage the website, and our website is a really, really, really great resource to learn about all of the services that Meals on Wheels provides. And the other way, besides going to the website and getting answers to specific questions you might have, is by volunteering to deliver meals. For many people, that first meal delivery experience can be life-changing. And I don't know that that's necessarily hyperbolic, because we really hear so many volunteers say that they think that what they're doing by delivering meals does more for them as a volunteer than it does for the people that we're serving. And the reality is that they're making our clients feel seen and remembered by the entire community when their meals are delivered by a cheerful volunteer. We have other volunteer opportunities that can connect a person to the why that keeps us going at the end of the day. And those are all available on our website, mowsatx.org. Again, that's mowsatx.org. And we really try to share stories about everything that we're doing there and on our social media. We work as hard as possible to be consistently active on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter. And we're also, of course, always working to find ways to get better at sharing those stories about our volunteers and our clients, and the work that we can do in the community thanks to our donors on places like YouTube as well. You can find links to all of our social media accounts on mowsatx.org, our website.
Thank you, Forrest and Ariana, for sharing your insights with us today. And thanks to our listeners for checking us out. As always, think smart and communicate smart. And I'll see you next time.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Smart Talk series. If you learned something or enjoyed our conversation, share it on social media or send to a friend. To learn more about this and other communication topics, visit mvw360.com. That's mvw360.com.